Completed, please rest assured to read, also known as Evil Emperor Loves Pets. Miss Scrap Material, she proud of the 9 heavens, great female lead cool article+strong female and strong male+cruel scum+divine beast+ferocious beast+upgraded monster fighting, tip for entering the pit. Non-traditional cultivation, the female protagonist is indifferent to the Virgin Mary, decisive in killing, do not spray if you don't like it, those who mind should enter with caution. Manchu, the 23rd century Special Operations Group No. 1, the only 4-type psychic agent, was born or died, and her soul traveled, suddenly becoming a third-class small country on the lower plane, abandoned by the family as a useless Miss Fourth. Waste material constitution. Let's learn about the demon body. Is it difficult to find elixirs and artifacts? The left-hand divine pill and the right-hand divine artifact, soaring against the sky all the way. Her life motto. Those who follow me prosper, those who oppose me perish. From then on, the useless material transformed into a genius, practicing for thousands of miles in a day, with space in hand. I have everything in the world, and all the heavenly and earthly treasures are in her hands. Divine beasts and ferocious beasts bow down and bow down. He is demonic and devilish, with ruthless methods, but he only has a special fondness for the cold little guy in front of him. Stay away from me, we are not familiar, and a certain woman has a disdainful expression on her face. Ali from once again came with a new book. Men are strong and women are strong. They are not abusive. They absolutely love literature. They are a couple all their lives. Special statement: Ali only wants to be a quiet and beautiful writer, with a cultivation level of glass level. If you don't like it, please leave quietly and refuse all kinds of random spraying. Chapter 1. Rebirth from Abandonment. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Fongyun Continent. Tugwa, the underworld forest. Dark clouds shrouded the entire forest, and suddenly, thunder exploded, pouring heavy rain from the sky. The rain was very fierce, with dense raindrops like countless silver needles weaving through the air, piecing together a torn picture. The thick fog wrapped around the entire forest, damp and cold to the bone. In the midst of a pile of rubble not far from the river, there lay a small, blood-colored figure. Her red dress was in tattered condition, her thin face was blurry with blood and flesh, and her black hair scattered on the side. The fresh red blood slowly flowed out under the wash of the rain, and the cold rain continued to beat against the girl's body. At this moment, the blood-colored body moved slightly, and a pair of eyes suddenly opened. In an instant, the cold light was wanton, as cold as ice and snow. Still alive. A cold voice emanated from her throat, and her pitch-black eyes stared without any waves at the falling raindrops. When she was stunned, a sudden and intense pain in her mind made her furrow her brows slightly and close her eyes tightly. A memory that did not belong to her swept over her. After a while, Manchu finally opened his eyes. She's really alive. She lay among the rocks, her face expressionless, with no trace of pain, as if the wound on her body had nothing to do with her. It seems that you have borrowed a corpse to revive your soul, master. A childish voice rang out in her mind, and a black mist condensed from her heart. In an instant, a cute and innocent iron-eating beast immediately caught her eye. Meng Meng, are you also here? Manchu's originally calm eyes flashed with a hint of joy. I am in harmony with my master's soul. As long as my master's soul is not extinguished, I will naturally follow her side. Meng Meng licked her paws, then stepped on her heart and continued, however, if you continue to lie down, maybe you will soon become a pitiful zombie in the wilderness again. Manchu slowly sat up straight, her face burning with pain and the sharp pain in her legs and heart making her eyebrows furrow slightly. TSK. What an ugly face. It's far less than 1/10 of what you used to be, master, Meng Meng said disdainfully, spinning around Manchu with her 2 paws on her back. Manchu ignored it and looked down at the sharp blade inserted into her heart, pondering whether to pull it out now or later. The injury is really serious. Master, let's find a place to take shelter from the rain first. The temperature of your shell is getting colder and colder, said Meng Meng, shaking her hair all over her mouth. Manchu nodded and gently covered her knees with her small hand. A green light slowly poured into her legs from the palm of her hand, and the legs, which were originally shattered, immediately healed automatically with a click. Manchu frowned at the faint green light. Did he even downgrade his abilities? It took a whole 20 minutes to repair a simple fracture. When she couldn't feel any pain in her legs, she tried to stand up from the ground. The dizziness in her head and the intense pain in her heart shook her body, almost causing her to fall and eat dog poop. Manchu stood straight with an expressionless face, searching for everything she could use in the pouring rain. Finally, her eyes froze in a nearby cave, and she walked slowly with steps. Her tattered dress was already soaked through, and as she walked slowly, the road under her feet left long bloodstains. The bright red blood quickly disappeared without a trace under the wash of the rain. The adorable iron-eating beast, with its claws on its back, closely followed its owner's footsteps as it approached the cave. After an unknown amount of time, Manchu finally arrived at her destination. This short journey seemed to have consumed all her energy. The tearing pain throughout the body is enough to cause a determined person to faint several times. Sitting against the cold stone wall at the entrance of the cave, Manchu finally took a serious look inside her body. The most serious thing about her whole body was the dagger inserted into her heart, only 0.1 centimeters away from her heart. The shattered fracture of her leg should have been caused when she was thrown down, even on her face. Her eyes were cold, and in her past and present lives, she despised the same sex who maliciously destroyed other people's faces the most. Yao Manchue. Manchu whispered, her clear and bright beautiful eyes dim and unclear. Master, your ability fluctuations are so weak, won't you drop levels? Meng Meng shook her hair and took out a fresh bamboo shoot from somewhere, eagerly nibbling on it. Manchu glanced at it, stretched out her small hand, and a faint green light burst out from her palm. Level 3, all that's not yet immoral will fall off, gently stroked his cheek, and green light slowly rushed into the flesh and blood, starting to slowly repair the potholes on his cheek. At this moment, Manchu began to seriously organize the memories in her mind. This was a world mainly focused on cultivation, and this continent was called Fengyan. The place she was currently in was the most terrifying forest in Tugua, the underworld. The original owner had an additional surname after her. She is 16 years old and is the daughter of Yao Tingji, the head of the Yao family, one of the 4 major families. She is ranked 4th in the family and was tested for her top-notch fire spirit root at the age of 7. Before the age of 10, she has already broken through to the 5th level of Qi cultivation. In the family, she can be said to have unlimited glory and should have the wind. However, the good times didn't last long. At the age of 12, the original owner, who was about to enter the Flowing Cloud sect, couldn't resist the plea of his second sister and went to Yuehua Mountain together to search for the so-called moonlight essence for the old lady. However, they were surrounded by a group of 5th-level black lions in the middle, destroying the elixir field and dispersing their cultivation. From then on, everything changed. The kind and gentle parents were no longer there, replaced by disgust and displeasure. Her grandmother, who always greeted her with a smile, despised her, while her already cold brother became even colder. Her tender fiancé eagerly withdrew the next day, and everyone began to avoid her, except for the second sister who coaxed her out, who remained gentle and considerate to her as always. Ha! Manchu smiled, her eyes devoid of any ripples, full of murderous intent. Useless things are not worthy of enjoying any of the family's cultivation resources. You are only worthy of staying in the lowest room, Yao Tingji said. From then on, she moved away from the warm and magnificent chieftain garden to the dilapidated thatched cottage used to imprison livestock, surviving on her own. A proud son of heaven became the laughing stock of all the people in Kyoto overnight, and the difference was not significant. The genius who was originally favored by the Luyun sect and specially recruited into the sect was abandoned the next day, replaced by her gentle and kind second sister Yamanyun, who is known as the most beautiful woman in Kyoto. The disdain of family members and the disregard of her parents made it difficult for her to move forward in that family. Not only did she have no food to eat, but she also had to endure the beating and bullying of servants. Such a life lasted for 4 years. Not to mention that, her good uncle, Yao Manshue, the daughter of the eldest elder of the Yao family, did not bully her enough on a daily basis. She even ordered servants to bind the original owner to this place and use the poison of the purple mantua to corrode her face. A sharp blade pierced her heart and threw her down the cliff, killing her soul. P.S. The cultivation levels of Fengyun continent are as follows. Qi refining, foundation building, golden elixir, yuaning, and transforming spirit. Each small realm is distinguished by early, middle, late, and great fullness, except for the gas refining period. For example, during the early period of foundation construction, other continents are temporarily not disclosed. The level and rank of elixirs and alchemists are the same. 1.9 levels, with each pattern being the first level, followed by spirit level, holy level, immortal level, and divine level. Grade is distinguished by low, medium, high, and perfect, for example. Low-grade spiritual level pills or spiritual level perfect. The level of an alchemist is the same as that of an alchemist, but the difference is that the weapons refined are treasures, spiritual tools, sacred tools, immortal tools, and divine tools. Grade is distinguished by inferior, intermediate, superior, and perfect, for example. Inferior or superior treasures. I am Division Line 1 Sun, P.S. Brain Storage Area. If you can't read this kind of cool article, please leave on your own and don't beat around. Thank you. Malicious speech, the author can't help but retort, reading only one word. Cool, cruel scum, upgrade, and various natural and earth treasures. If you don't like it, please leave quietly and don't affect other readers. Thank you. Chapter 2. Gene Shaping Solution. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hate it. Manchu put down her small hand to heal her cheeks and gently stroked her chest, murmuring to herself. There was still a hint of unwillingness from the original owner there. Her chest was tightly packed, Manchu's eyes flickered lightly, blood clotted on her cheeks, no longer the fiery pain she had just experienced, and her small face, which was the size of a palm, was particularly terrifying. Since I have occupied your body, I will not let you die in vain. I will not let go of anyone who has bullied you, so rest in peace. The cold and indifferent words came from her pale lips. As she finished speaking, she indeed felt a relaxation in her chest. She slowly leaned against the cold cave for a while before attempting to use her spiritual power to sense her own space. It's on, a glimmer of joy flashed in my eyes, but at the same time, I felt a sense of helplessness. The space was open, but I didn't have the energy to take out the things inside. In her past life, she was an orphan who was secretly caught in a training camp due to her special physique. The place was filled with children with the same special physique as her. However, she is the most special one, because she possesses 4 types of abilities. Gold, wood, thunder, and spirit, which are the most cared for objects in the camp. And the places she often goes to, besides training camps, are the dark laboratories where she lives endlessly with blood drawn, electric shocks, and open wounds, and Meng Meng is the experimental object they have captured. That pervert not only wanted to drain her blood, but also used cold instruments to peel off her cute soul and merge it into her body. However, by chance, it facilitated her to be in harmony with her cute soul. It's really ironic that even after more than a decade of research, there hasn't been any results. Master, Yang Huai's life and death have been too easy for that old beast. You should have skinned him and cramped him, just using lightning to strike him and destroy that hellish base. It's just too cheap for him, Meng Meng replied casually after licking her paws. Manchu didn't say a word, feeling that her spirit had improved a lot before sitting cross-legged. She didn't dare to pull out the sharp blade in her heart rashly. Now she doesn't have the elixir of this world in her hand, and her wooden ability has just healed her cheeks. It will take a few more minutes for her to recover. Gently caress the shattered dantian, and the spiritual roots inside are no longer there. Is it the ultimate fire spirit root? According to information from the original master's mind, a third-class small country in this lower plane can indeed be considered one in a million, no wonder it is so envied. After a while, it felt like the wooden ability had recovered a lot. Manchu then placed his hands on the dagger at his heart and forcefully pulled it out. Puff. The bright red blood rushed out like a fountain, and Manchu's face suddenly turned pale. However, she didn't make a sound at all. The faint green source kept coming out of her palm and rushing into the blood hole in her heart. Half an hour later, she felt the blood hole in her heart gradually closing. She then withdrew her little hand and took a breath. Congratulations, Master, you haven't died yet. You have perfectly escaped the threat of death. The cute and lazy lay on the ground, leisurely speaking. Manchu nodded, and now it was the physical condition of this body. Without the fire spirit root, one could no longer practice. In this world where martial arts are revered, what a great shame. However, her lips suddenly curved slightly, which was only aimed at the original owner. Who is she, Manchu? In the 23rd century, she was the #1 member of the Special Action Group, the only 4-type superpower. In her past life, in such a world with scarce spiritual energy, she was able to elevate each type of superpower to the full level. Moreover, in this world with abundant spiritual energy, what if there is no spiritual root? If she guesses correctly, her abilities have similarities with the spiritual root attributes of this world. Slowly closing her eyes, she entered meditation. In her past life, every time she needed to perform a mission, she relied more on her 4 series abilities besides her fierce grid-killing power. The only way to improve one's abilities through cultivation is through meditation, in addition to relying on the spiritual jade and the thin spiritual energy around it. After sinking her heart, she finally released her spirit and entered her own space to observe what was left in the space. The self-explosion of the superpower not only shattered her, but also destroyed all of that person's hard work. I'm afraid the entire base has been flattened. Perhaps, to the death of that person and the high-level personnel in the camp, she would be so ruthless that she would drag everyone to hell together. At the moment of self-explosion, Manchu seemed to feel that the space had been greatly affected. Just as she woke up, she sensed that all her abilities were well existing, but perhaps influenced by the self-explosion of spiritual power. The original full level has been reduced to level 3, so it is only when she uses wooden healing that it becomes so difficult. At the beginning, the reason why she chose to self-destruct was not only because of the so-called crazy proposals from the senior management in the camp, but also because of the things she had taken and placed in the space, which made countries crazy about wanting it. Space, an abstract and mysterious thing, was constructed by her in her mind when her spiritual power reached level 10. A room of about 100 square meters, without a door or window, just a square-shaped room that can store things but cannot accommodate living things. Consciously entering the space, 100 square meters of space was shining brightly, except for some mechanical firearms and ammunition. There are also a lot of fresh and juicy bamboo shoots, neat medicine cabinets, miscellaneous food, and some clothes and toiletries to change. Passing by the item, my gaze froze on the metal password box in the center of the medicine cabinet. The box was somewhat special, with a chill emanating from all over. With a movement of her mind, the box appeared in her hand. She slowly opened her eyes and lowered her gaze to see that the metal box was still emitting cold air. Oh! Isn't this the most precious thing of that old thing? I didn't expect you, Master, to bring it here. I'm afraid that old thing won't survive until death. Meng Meng stared at the small box in her hand with great interest, her big black eyes wide open. Manchu ignored it and extended her onion-white fingers to release a small purple lightning bolt towards the lock core. With a click, the lock core opened and a piercing chill hit her face. When the cold air dissipated, a crystal bottle caught her eye, and the red liquid inside was particularly eye-catching. Gene-shaping liquid. Something that can drive countries crazy is also the culprit that caused her to destroy the entire base. This is made from the blood of 278 children with special constitutions at Yang Huaina's abnormal base, as well as unknown animal blood imported from abroad. And their goal is to create more multi-lineage superpowers like her by relying on this small bottle of liquid. Chapter 3. Rebirth and Transformation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Unfortunately, their efforts were ultimately in vain, and their black eyes narrowed. Since it's shaping, it's okay to give it a try. Anyway, no matter how bad it is, it won't be worse than this broken body that cannot be cultivated. Before Meng Meng could stop her, she opened the bottle cap and poured it all into her mouth with a loud gulp before swallowing it. Master, you're crazy. You dare to drink all the things that Yang Huai, the old man, has researched. Meng Meng shouted angrily. Manchu tugged at the corner of her mouth. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly felt a piercing pain coming from her abdomen. She bent her body, and cold sweat gushed out from her forehead, as if her entire body had been gently torn apart and healed again. Even someone like her who endured pain couldn't help but moan. Master, a hint of panic flashed in Meng Meng's eyes. Tears as big as beans slid from the dark corners of his eyes, and he impatiently spun around, his cold claws constantly scraping the soil on the ground. Manchu seemed to be immersed in boiling water, and her whole body began to emit bursts of hot air. She bit her lower lip tightly, feeling a slightly familiar pain. Why was it so similar to the feeling when the original owner first took the wash marrow pill, but the wash essence and slash marrow were not so painful? Perhaps. Before she could think more, another wave of pain struck. This time, it was obviously much more severe than just now. As time passed, the pain in the 5 organs and 6 organs began to spread, and the skin began to open its pores from the inside out to suck in black dirt. All the organs inside seemed to be twisted. After an unknown amount of time, Manchu struggled to open her eyes. At this moment, her whole body was covered in a thick layer of black dirt, and waves of foul odor emanated from her body and spread throughout the cave. Meng Meng saw her owner wake up, her eyes lit up, and just as she was about to lean over, she was stopped by the smell from her body. She retreated to the edge of the cave in disgust and said, "Master, why don't you go wash yourself in the small river below? This smell is so deadly." Manchu regained his composure and felt a bit embarrassed. Without saying a word, he rushed out of the cave and jumped into a nearby small river. The heavy rain had already stopped at some point, and the air was faintly filled with the freshness after the rain. 2/4 of an hour later. Manchu put on her previous life's clothes and sat quietly at the entrance of the cave, with 2 wooden sticks set up next to her drying the washed and tattered clothes. There was no way she could do it, as the original owner was dressed in tattered clothes, and she couldn't wander around wearing her previous life's clothes. "What's the swelling like? Lord Luan, where else are you feeling unwell?" Meng Meng held a 1-meter-long bamboo shoot and bit it, while also asking vaguely. Manchu glanced at it and said, "Either finish eating before eating, or finish speaking before eating." Bam, bam, bam. Meng Meng kept chewing on the fresh and delicious bamboo shoots in her mouth, her black big eyes flickering and staring at her fair and familiar cheeks. He wanted to remind him several times, but he couldn't say anything after all. Should he tell his master the same face as his previous life? Forget it, let's wait for her to notice on her own. Manchu, after shaking his head in silence, he sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and consciousness began to enter his body, looking towards Dantian. Suddenly, she froze in place, her abilities being directly transformed into full attributes and sublimated into Chaos Spirit Root. How could it be a chaotic spiritual root? What exactly is going on? Although she had 4 types of abilities in her past life, it was impossible for her to suddenly switch to all attributes. Before the destruction of the original owner's spiritual root, it was just a top-notch fire spiritual root. Why is it? She widened her eyes and picked up the crystal bottle placed beside her, carefully examining it. I couldn't believe that an abandoned physique had been transformed into an incredible existence by such a small bottle of shaping liquid. Chaos Spiritual Root, also known as Full Attribute Spiritual Root, regardless of which attribute is cultivated, other attributes will increase accordingly. Cultivating far exceeds any spiritual root, and the chance of obtaining the Great Tao Law is also greater than other spiritual roots. But there are advantages and disadvantages to this type of spiritual root. Although its cultivation speed is thousands of times faster than that of ordinary people, if one does not pay attention to their mental state, it is easy to become demonic. As far as she knew in her mind, there was another attribute, which was the pseudo-spiritual root, a discarded spiritual root that was looked down upon by all sects. It had 4 or 5 types of spiritual roots, which were messy and not abundant. Each type of spiritual root had incomplete attributes, and the cultivation speed was extremely slow. What she didn't expect was that her elixir field was not only well repaired, but also had 1 out of 10,000 chaotic spiritual roots. This happiness came so suddenly, it was a bit flattering. I didn't expect that bottle of gene-shaping liquid to be so powerful. Not only did it change the physique and bones of the body, but it also expanded the spiritual veins inside the body, shaping such an incredible existence. If I had known earlier, she should have left a small portion to study slowly. This is even more powerful than the world's marrow-washing pill. Since she was able to cultivate, Manchu no longer hesitated. She closed her eyes and began to recall the mnemonic of introducing qi into her body, trying to communicate and absorb the spiritual power of heaven and earth. At this moment, a continuous stream of spiritual energy began to flow towards Manchu, and her body began to emit a scorching light. Suddenly, a vortex of spiritual energy appeared above her head, and a large amount of spiritual energy rushed into her body. This movement left Meng Meng stunned. With the injection of spiritual power, Manchu felt like there was a giant dragon in her body, constantly surging inside her. Each surge seemed to attract the sound of dragon chants. Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. During these 3 days, Meng Meng stared intently at Manchu, who was shrouded in golden light in front of her. At this moment, the spiritual energy around him began to rotate continuously, rapidly rushing into Manchu's body. Click. There seemed to be a sound of some barrier breaking, accompanied by a few bangs, and circles of light began to appear on Manchu's body. Suddenly. Breakthrough. Meng Meng bit on the tender bamboo shoots and opened a pair of big eyes. 2 hours later, she slowly opened her eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. She lowered her gaze and couldn't help but curl her lips slightly towards her hands. Success. Is this the 5th floor of the gas refining period? Until now, she still feels a bit unbelievable, but during the qi refining phase, the 5th level actually competes with those 8th level abilities in her previous life. Looking inside her body, she saw that Dantian was standing tall in a gaseous form. She stood up satisfied and walked to the side of the tattered clothes to change into something. She said, "It's time to go out." "Okay. Master, are you ready to go back for revenge?" Meng Meng stood up and walked up to her with her short legs, asking. Manchu shook his head and said, "With my current weak chicken strength, what kind of revenge can I take? Since I'm here, how can I improve myself without exploring and experiencing various adventures? As for revenge." She squinted her beautiful eyes and said, "There's always an opportunity." Habitually touching my face, I realized that my cheeks were no longer a bumpy texture, but rather delicate and smooth. "Speak up. She hasn't seen this face yet." I don't know which face is better than her previous appearance. Chapter 4. Black Peak Valley. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The master said yes, but where are we going now? Meng Meng tilted her head and asked. Manchu bypassed it and walked straight out of the cave towards the dense forest across from the small river. Her back was straight and steady, and even though she was wearing a tattered red dress, she could not conceal her stunning demeanor. At this moment, a chaotic sound of footsteps came, mixed with the roar of beasts. She stopped, her eyes lit up, and Meng Meng beside her saw this. Her body transformed into a phantom and immediately plunged into Manchu's spiritual consciousness. As the sound approached, Manchu's tiptoe lifted into the air and landed steadily on a tall branch. Roar! Several roars of beasts rang out, and she lowered her gaze to look down. She saw 5 men and 2 women dressed in uniform green robes running towards her in embarrassment. Manchu's eyes narrowed and she said, "People of the Luyan sect." Upon closer inspection, there are 2 chi refining 5 layers, 2 chi refining 8 layers, and 1 chi refining 6 layers. Judging from the attire of these individuals, they look like disciples from an external sect. They are truly one of the top sects in the land, and even a few disciples from an external sect can possess such strength. So, the internal sect. She slowly curled her lips. If she remembers correctly, Yao Manyun took her place and entered the Luyan sect. I just don't know if it's the outer door or the inner door. She restrained her breath and continued to stare silently below. The figures of the few people quickly swept over the trees and ran forward, while behind them were the 7-step black panther with sharp teeth and a fierce face. No wonder they are being chased around everywhere. It's just that there are so many 7th and 8th level monster beasts in the middle circle. What if they were inside? After a while, when the bodies of a few people and animals disappeared into the dense forest, Manchu jumped down and looked around, lifting his steps towards the west. After an unknown amount of time, she stopped in a hazy forest and cautiously scanned the surroundings. Thick leaves covered the gaps between them, and the trees could hardly see sunlight. Surrounded by endless darkness. Suddenly, a sinister wind struck, curling up her splashy long hair. Manchu waved her small hand and a military knife immediately appeared in her hand. At this moment, Meng Meng emerged from her sea of consciousness, with a pair of black eyeballs vigilantly looking around. Master, this place is not doing well. I sense a terrifying aura covering this forest, Meng Meng said anxiously as she stood in front of Manchu. Well, if I'm right, this should be the most dangerous canyon in the underworld forest, Haifeng Valley, Manchu said lightly. Suddenly, a terrifying black mist rushed towards the back of her head, feeling danger. Manchu quickly turned to the side and narrowly avoided it. Bang! Where she had just stood, a huge tree on the side was instantly cut off by her waist. With a stern gaze, as soon as she lifted her eyes, a black mist attacked her from the right. Roar! Upon seeing this, Mengmeng's body suddenly swelled several times and let out a loud roar. She then extended her paw and jumped, patting the black mist. The black mist dissipated in an instant, and at this moment, a large group of black mist surged out from all directions. Manchu widened his eyes and didn't have time to think much. He waved his military knife and kept cutting towards the black mist. However, ordinary military knives had no effect on these black mist. She had no choice but to throw away the short knife in her hand, lift her palm and take in her breath. The purple lightning power kept hitting the black mist rushing towards her. Every lightning strike shattered the black mist, her figure like an electric shock, her movements swift and fierce, her petite body constantly weaving through the gathering black mist like a ghost. Damn it! What kind of stuff are these? It's really endless. Meng Meng cursed silently as she waved her paws. Cute, find the right time, leave here, Manchu's voice rang out. Meng Meng nodded and waved her claws as she approached Manchu. Finally, as she approached her, it roared loudly, "Master, come up quickly." Without hesitation, Manchu jumped onto Mengmeng's back, her body like a shooting star, and she ran out of the black mist towards the inside. After running for an unknown amount of time, one person and one beast stopped at a huge cave. Manchu got off its back, and Mengmeng instantly transformed into a petite little creature and jumped into her arms. Holding its small body, Manchu looked at it with concern and asked, "Is there any discomfort?" Mengmeng shook her head and said, "No, it's just that it hasn't appeared in that form for a long time, it's a bit uncomfortable." Well, Manchu nodded. Now that her strength is too weak, she needs to improve as soon as possible. Otherwise, not to mention avenging the original owner, whether she can survive from here is a question. "Master, there is a cave here. Do you want to enter?" Mengmeng extended her small paw and pointed to the cave on the right, asking. Manchu looked up and silently nodded before carrying it inside. The cave is very dark and humid, except for the ticking sound of water droplets, there is only the sound of Manchu's footsteps. Taking out a flashlight from the space, Manchu walked and looked at it. Suddenly, a plant shining with silver caught her eye and said, "Is this?" She quickly walked over to take a closer look and couldn't help but be taken aback. Silver spirit flower. The most important material for refining the Gu Yuan Dan, in the original owner's memory, her greatest wish was to become an alchemist and then refine a pill for herself that could repair the Dan field and shape the spiritual roots. Unfortunately. She shook her head regretfully. There was no room for cultivation, and she had no choice but to. She looked reluctantly at the plants that were constantly shining with silver light and sighed. "What's wrong, master?" Mengmeng yawned and couldn't help but feel curious as her own master looked at a grass plant with a regretful expression. No, she shook her head and looked reluctantly for a while before retracting her gaze and continuing forward. However, not only did the original owner yearn to become an alchemist, but she also developed a strong interest in the world's elixirs. Find a time, she must study it carefully. In her past life, every time she was injured, she was healed with wooden abilities. At that time, when her wooden ability reached level 12, she could achieve the level of life and death, human flesh and white bones. However, now her ability level has not only dropped but has also been integrated with attributes. Even if she uses it, the effect is minimal. Therefore, she still needs to find a chance to become an alchemist. Thinking this way, Manchu's eyes showed a resolute expression. The more she walked inside, the more she felt a chilling chill engulfing her entire body. She is just a novice who has just broken through the 5th level of her chi refining period. Although she has used spiritual power to protect her body, she can still clearly feel the piercing cold rushing into her body. Chapter 5. Demon Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I didn't expect the cave to be so big. As soon as Manchu stepped out of the cave and reached a flat ground, she immediately felt something was wrong. She became even more cautious, after all, she was not aware of any unknown dangers ahead. Suddenly, her footsteps stopped and her eyes turned cold, carrying a cold and ruthless aura of killing. Whoosh! A black shadow appeared out of thin air, waving at Manchu's face. The black aura, accompanied by a terrifying aura, attacked her. Manchu fiercely retreated, condensing a large amount of spiritual power in his hands and counterattacked the black shadow. The black shadow stood in place, easily dissolving her attack with a wave of her hand. Ah! Interesting, but even the small chi refining ant dares to fight back against this seat, a rough voice sounded, and Manchu looked up. In the darkness, the figure of a goblet immediately caught her eye. Although he couldn't see his appearance clearly, Manchu could be certain that the person in front of him must be an old man over 50 years old. "Little girl, give me the divine beast in your arms, and I will make your death less painful," said the black figure arrogantly. A divine beast? Do you mean cute? Although Manchu was puzzled in his heart, he looked at him with a calm expression and said, "Are you thinking about farting?" The old man narrowed his red eyes and said, "Stinky girl, it seems that you don't shed tears until you see the coffin." After speaking, his figure flashed like a floating shadow and swept up to Manchu, reaching out his rough palm to grab her neck. Manchu's footsteps spun, and a carp straightened and retreated. Before her body could stand still, a black breath hit her heart again. Roar! Meng Meng let out a loud roar, and its body instantly grew larger. It bared its sharp teeth and wanted to bite the old man's thigh, but the old man sneered. "Even with your current appearance, you dare to act recklessly and seek death in front of me." As the words fell, a large amount of black energy swung towards Meng Meng's stomach. Ow! Meng Meng's huge body flew backwards for several meters and fiercely hit the ground, spitting out blood at her mouth. Cute. Manchu was shocked and lost his composure. He knocked off the black aura in front of her, and his figure flashed towards the old man. He lifted his leg and swept across, fiercely kicking the old man in front of him in the abdomen. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly, his body shook, and a terrifying pressure came towards her entire body. Manchu's face turned white, and she knelt down with a thud. A hint of blood began to overflow from the corner of her mouth. Damn it, it was actually a strong person in the golden elixir. She gritted her teeth tightly, and large beads of sweat fell from her forehead. Looking at the old man walking towards her, Manchu felt for the first time in her life that her life was threatened. Master. Meng Meng lay on the ground for a long time, unable to move. With the old man's blow just now, its internal organs seemed to have shattered. The old man was too powerful for the current owner to resist. The old man approached Manchu and grabbed her slender neck, lifting her up with a cruel smile. "Good eyes, good looks, we still lack a cauldron, it's you." Manchu tried hard to break open his hands, but the hand that held onto her neck remained motionless like an iron band. She gritted her silver teeth tightly and stared at the old man in front of her with red eyes. No wonder he was black, Moshio. With a movement of her mind, a black P20 pistol immediately appeared in her hand, and her right hand quickly grabbed the trigger in front of the old man's face as he was stunned. Bang! The old man was startled, and his subordinate who held Manchu's neck relaxed their consciousness. He quickly swung a black barrier in front of him, and the bullet bounced back instantly when it hit the barrier. Manchu didn't have time to breathe, so he rolled on the spot, realizing that the pistol was of no use. He threw it directly into the space, his figure flashed, and he immediately came to the back of the old man. Seizing the opportunity, he quickly threw his fist at the old man's back like lightning. The old man's reaction was extremely fast. He suddenly turned around and grabbed Manchu's fist, pinched it hard, and only heard a click. The sound of bone fracture rang out, and Manchu bit his lip tightly, kicking between his legs. The old man let out a painful sound and slapped Manchu in the chest, sending her body flying several meters away and crashing onto the nearby stone wall and falling to the ground. Puff! Manchu spewed out a large mouthful of blood, her right hand weakly resting on the ground, enduring the excruciating pain. She slowly climbed up from the ground, glanced sideways at her powerless right hand, and secretly used her wooden attributes to heal it. Then, she lifted her cold eyes and stared at the twisted old man's face for a moment. "Stinky girl, you're looking for death." The old man breathed a sigh of relief, his eyes filled with fierce anger, his whole body surrounded by black energy, and his body rushed straight in front of Manchu like a shooting star, with terrifying black energy constantly attacking her heart. Manchu quickly retreated, feeling that his right hand was no longer in severe pain. He spun his body and swept across with one foot. His left hand's spiritual power was concentrated in his hand, and he bent down to punch him in the abdomen. The strong wind from his fist made a whistling sound, with each punch becoming more and more severe. The old man's whole body shook, and the fist that hit him in the abdomen was instantly bounced open. The black air tilted out and sucked at Manchu, who widened his eyes before he could react. His abdomen was suddenly pierced. Jia jia jia. Surprisingly, it was a chaotic spiritual root that surprised me greatly. Ha ha ha. The old man laughed wildly, watching Manchu spewing blood out of her mouth. He gave a cruel smile, and after stirring her abdomen a few times with his big palm, he grabbed the transparent spiritual root and wanted to pull it out. However, a pair of small hands suddenly grabbed his hand, and Manchu's eyes were cold. "You're looking for death." After speaking, a strong wind suddenly blew around Manchu, and a large amount of spiritual energy began to condense around her. She grabbed the old man's hand and squeezed it hard. In an instant, the black energy from the old man's body began to continuously surge towards Manchu's body. What? The old man's face showed great shock, feeling that his strength was being gradually extracted. He immediately panicked. At first glance, Manchu's cold and snowy eyes were filled with ridicule. The old man seemed to realize something and caught a glimpse of the magical energy on his body, which instantly transformed into spiritual energy as he entered the little girl's body in front of him. His pupils suddenly shrank and he said, "Magic. The body of the demon. Get away." He wanted to break free from his constraints and stay away. I don't know where Manchu came from with such great strength. No matter how the old man used it, he couldn't break free. Ah 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 ah. Get out of here, stinky girl. How dare you draw your cultivation from this place? Ah, this place is going to kill you. The old man shouted wildly, his left hand continuously hitting Manchu's heart, trying to knock her away. However, no matter how he hit her, Manchu remained motionless and allowed his fist to continuously hit him. Fresh red blood kept flowing from the corner of her mouth, and the intense pain in her heart made her face pale. Despite this, she still tightly pulled the old man's right hand, which was inserted into her abdomen, continuously extracting all the strength from him. After an unknown amount of time, the old man's body began to slowly change, and his already somewhat emaciated arms became as thin as wood, until they finally turned into a corpse. Chapter 6. Dragon Skeletons. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Manchu threw away the dried corpse in his hand and sat down on the ground, with blood still gushing from his abdominal wound. She stood up with difficulty and walked step by step towards the cute direction. "Meng Meng, are you okay?" Manchu sat weakly beside Meng Meng, reaching out her little hand covered in blood to gently stroke its hair. "Master." Meng Meng weakly called out, rubbing her head against her small hand slightly. At this moment, Manchu's body suddenly emitted a scorching light, and her eyes were slightly stunned. She quickly endured the severe pain, sat cross-legged, and began to seriously advance. The halos of advancement continued to appear around her, and a large amount of mist transformed into spiritual energy rushing towards her. When her spiritual power reached a certain saturation point, she only heard a roar, and her spiritual power pierced through the barrier of the fifth layer during the Qi training period, continuously rising. The gas refining period has 6 floors. 7 layers of gas refining period. The refining period has 8 layers. The refining period has 9 layers. The strength is still constantly trying to rise, but... Manchu opened her eyes fiercely, suppressing her constant desire to rise in strength. Without the foundation pill, even if she had built it, her foundation would be shallow and meaningless. So, for the time being, she can only suppress it. She must go out of the underworld to Kyoto as soon as possible to purchase the foundation pill. If not, the thick spiritual power in her body will not be released, and it is easy for her to explode and die. Taking a deep breath, she lowered her eyes and caught a glimpse of the wound that had healed due to advancing. With a wave of her small hand, she took Meng Meng into the sea of knowledge and then came to the old man's body. She explored the withered body and suddenly caught a glimpse of a ring on her withered finger. She took it off and looked at it, her eyes filled with joy. Neji. Manchu quickly wiped away his consciousness from Neji and explored inside. In an instant, he was stunned. Surprisingly, There are so many natural resources and treasures. Looking around, she put the ring into the space and later explored it further. She searched the old man again and found nothing valuable. After offering a spiritual fire to burn it, she walked forward. The more you walk inside, the more suffocating you feel. Why is this Black Peak Valley so big? Manchu's willow eyebrows furrow slightly, and the surroundings are quiet and eerie. You can hear needles falling from the entire forest. Why did the old man appear here? It seems like he's settled here, so somewhere here must be his residence. Suddenly, her footsteps stopped, her eyes narrowed slightly, and her hand hidden under her sleeve slowly condensed its spiritual power. Manchu continued walking forward without a word. At this moment, a white shadow suddenly passed in front of her. Manchu's eyes stiffened and he rushed forward with an arrow step. The white shadow seemed to be frightened and accelerated to run forward. When he saw another cave ahead, he rushed in directly. Manchu stopped and looked up at the cave in front of him. Without hesitation, he flew in. In the cave, as soon as Manchu's feet landed, the candles on both sides of the stone walls lit up autonomously. She walked cautiously towards the passage. The cave was very large and the passage was also very long. Manchu looked around as she walked. After walking for about half an hour, a stone door suddenly caught her eye. Quickly stepping forward, she reached out and touched everything around her. Seeing that there were no switches or anything like that, Manchu frowned. Is it just a stone wall? Just as she was lost in thought, a small iris totem immediately caught her eye. Iris flower. She slowly moved forward, reached out and touched her, and suddenly a suction swept across her entire body. Manchu's pupils shrank, and before she could react, her body disappeared out of thin air. After spinning around for a while, Manchu shook her swollen head and then looked up, dumbfounded. Where is this? Before she could react, suddenly a huge unidentified object hit her. Being alert to danger, she quickly swept aside and with a loud bang, something resembling a huge stone fell onto the spot where she had just stood. Manchu fixed her gaze and immediately widened her eyes. What kind of big stone is this? This is clearly a large group of poisonous ants. Walking faster than thinking, he ran straight towards the nearby forest. Shit! What the hell is this place? She couldn't help but curse. Behind her, a large group of fiery red poisonous ants were rushing towards Manchu with fierce lights on their faces. She didn't dare to stop for a moment and turned to look at the fierce poisonous ants. Manchu wanted to curse her mother, as if she had thought of something. She ran and checked with her mind to see if there was anything useful. Suddenly, she thought of the old man's ring. She quickly stopped and took out the old man's ring to explore inside. Suddenly, a small black porcelain bottle came into her eyes, soul-slaying liquid. Manchu didn't even think of it, so she took it out. Opening the bottle cap, he fell down the path behind him, then threw away the bottle in his hand and hid in the bushes, his back tightly against a tree trunk, quietly watching. Sure enough, when the venomous ant colony chased after them, it seemed to feel a dangerous aura and immediately dared not move any further. Manchu raised his eyebrows. It seemed that this poison was the old man's magic weapon for survival here, but he didn't know if it was made by himself or taken from someone else. She emerged from the trunk of the tree and looked coldly at the venomous ant colony that showed a fierce light and was unwilling to keep spinning in place. She then continued to walk forward with a swagger. Although these venomous ants were not of high rank, they were in large numbers. If you could avoid these poisonous and aggressive creatures that lived in groups, you should avoid them. Don't be stubborn with them. Otherwise, even at the ends of the earth, as long as your breath did not dissipate, they would follow your breath and chase you. Of course, if you have enough strength to strike them out with one blow. The road was quiet and silent, except for the creaking sound of withered yellow branches and leaves on the ground. The afterglow of the setting sun dyed the entire forest red. As the final glow dissipated, the dusk gradually darkened, and Manchu became increasingly restless as she walked. She had been walking in this forest for several hours, but still nowhere else in the road or cave. Along the way, except for the first toxic ant colony, she had not encountered any dangerous beasts. Isn't it just a forest behind this stone gate, without any peculiarities? Quickly, Manchu was smitten by her own speculations, and as she looked at the battlefield in front of her, which seemed like a human purgatory, she was instantly stunned. Is it a battlefield? Unexpectedly, as she walked through the jungle, she arrived at a huge battlefield surrounded by skeletons, including humans, beasts, demons, and Manchu. She cautiously stepped into the battlefield and looked around, only to suddenly see a huge skeleton. Dragon Clan. She quickly stepped forward, tilted her head back, and stared blankly at the huge skeleton in front of her for a while. Suddenly, her eyes rolled and she grinned loudly. This large skeleton was so big, it was really amazing. It was a good thing. Although it was unclear how long this thing had died, it did not affect its value. This thing is not only a good material for refining weapons, but the most important thing is the huge power hidden inside. If one day she had other contract beasts, she could still absorb it. Chapter 7. 7 Order Treasure Hunting Mouse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With this thought in mind, Manchu quickly waved her small hand, and the originally huge skeleton was instantly taken into her own space. Just as she was about to lift her steps and leave, she suddenly caught a glimpse of clusters of purple flowers and said, "What is this?" She took 2 steps forward in confusion, squatted down and carefully observed the plants she had never seen before. However, the spiritual energy on them was so strong that it was impossible for the spiritual plants nurtured by the power of the dragon bones to grow. For a moment, Manchu was a bit troubled. Her space could not contain any living things. If it were really nurtured by the dragon bones, it would be a waste if it were discarded here. In the original owner's memory, there was no memory of this plant. Now that she has collected the dragon bones into the space and lost the power support of the dragon bones, it is certain that this spiritual plant will soon wither. Isn't this a pity? Since she has encountered it, there is no reason not to take it away. Upon further reflection, there must be other ways. Manchu stood up straight, her hands behind her, quietly pondering how to take the plant away. Suddenly, Meng Meng, who was originally resting in her sea of consciousness, rushed out and reached out to the purple flower, pulling a few plants and stuffing them into her mouth. Meng Meng. Manchu was shocked, wanting to stop, but it was too late. She watched helplessly as a few small flowers entered Meng Meng's mouth. Aren't you going to die? You dare to stuff anything into your mouth? Manchu widened his eyes and scolded loudly. Meng Meng opened a pair of dark and round eyes, staring at her innocently without saying a word. Manchu had no choice but to squat on the ground and look at it with concern, asking, "Is there any discomfort?" Meng Meng shook her head and was about to speak when a white light burst out from around her, feeling a warmth enveloping her. Meng Meng quickly flashed into Manchu's sea of consciousness. Manchu. With a sigh, as long as it's not harmful to Meng Meng, she slowly moves forward. Since this thing is useful to Meng Meng, she'll put it away for now. After thinking for a moment, she took out the box that had previously been filled with gene-shaping liquid, which had air conditioning that could preserve freshness. Let's put these small flowers inside first. With this thought in mind, she uprooted the remaining 6 spiritual plants and put them away before standing up to continue moving forward. I don't know exactly where this is, either. As Manchu walked, she took out a piece of bread from the space and nibbled on it. Whenever she encountered something that she found pleasing to her eyes, she put it in the space. Whether useful or not, as long as it was good to her, she immediately collected it in the space. 2 days later, Manchu stopped in a plain area. Looking around, there was a vast expanse of white, and all the scenery was at a glance. Unlike the battlefield filled with bones before, this place looked surprisingly peaceful. Something was wrong. Although she didn't know where it was, Manchu was certain that this place was not as it appeared. She took a deep breath and thought that she had been wandering here for several days, but still hadn't left this haunted place. Her heart began to become a bit anxious. If she had known, she wouldn't have walked in the direction of Black Peak Valley. Now that it was better, she was trapped in this place and couldn't get out. At this moment, a strong wind suddenly approached, and Manchu instinctively reached out to block it, but the ground under her feet suddenly loosened, and Manchu only felt an unstable center of gravity, and her body quickly fell down. What kind of ghost? Manchu's face was covered in black lines, and she quickly controlled her unbalanced body. Looking down, the increasingly dark scene in front of her made her furrow slightly. There was such a deep underground hole, and Manchu didn't know that just as she fell in front of her, the originally white plain around her suddenly transformed into a lush green forest. As soon as his feet landed, Manchu cautiously looked around. The stone walls on both sides were adorned with night pearls as big as adult fists, illuminating the surroundings like daylight. Below the night pearls, murals were particularly eye-catching. A huge iris totem on the stone wall in front almost occupied the entire wall. Is it the iris flower again? Manchu furrowed her brows. It was this ghost that pulled her into this haunted place and couldn't get out. She lifted her eyes and scanned it. It looked like a tomb here, but who did it belong to? Why did she fall into this? Suddenly, a white shadow passed in front of her, and Manchu's eyes became sharp. Without hesitation, he chased after her. The white shadow moved very quickly. Whenever Manchu was about to catch up, it could always distance itself from her, which made Manchu very unhappy. As she ran, she waved spiritual powers towards the white shadow in front of her, and green vines rushed out of her palm, attacking her straight. No matter how the vine attacks, it can easily dodge it. Manchu suddenly became interested, and she wanted to see what it was. She dared to tease her 3 or 4 times. Thinking of this, she gathered all her spiritual power at the soles of her feet, and her body rushed away like a ghost. The speed was so fast that it shocked the white figure ahead. In just such a blink of an eye, her body was firmly entangled by the vines that appeared out of nowhere. Squeezing. A frightened creaking sound sounded, and Manchu came to buying to take a closer look. He was momentarily taken aback and said, "Mouse. You are the mouse. Your whole family is a mouse, despicable human. Hurry up and let go of me, do you know who I am?" said the white mouse in a mouthful. Manchu wrapped his hands around his chest and looked at the small ball in front of him with a calm expression, saying, "It's not a mouse, so what are you?" "Humph, young master, I am the exploration mouse of the noble family," said the white mouse with its paws on its waist, holding its small head high and proud. "Isn't it still a mouse?" Manchu spoke expressionlessly. "Although it's a mouse, I'm not the lowly mouse you're talking about. Don't make a mistake for me. By the way, humans, please let go of me quickly, otherwise I'll be impolite to you." The white mouse glared fiercely at Manchu. Manchu raised her eyebrows, her black eyes lightly glanced at it, and casually said, "What if I don't? Are you the one who led me here? I haven't even dealt with you yet, so you have the courage to be rude to me." Manchu's cool-eyed knife swung towards it. The white mouse choked, feeling a little guilty. "Then. You can't blame me. Who made you chase me?" Manchu's expression suddenly paused, and he seemed to be quite reasonable when he said, "Hey. Little mouse, do you know where this is?" "My name is not Little Mouse, I have a name. My name is Mouse White, and this was chosen by my clan leader," protested White Mouse. Manchu's mouth twitched. Mouse White. Such a second name. Seeing her indescribable expression, the white mouse immediately exploded and said, "What kind of expression are you? Is there something wrong with my name? This is the title of a warrior that symbolizes our race." Chapter 8. The Realm of Lament. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Manchu, this is a land of howling, and we were all brought in by that iris totem, said the white mouse with a pair of round little eyes. The howling realm. Manchu's pupils suddenly shrank, no wonder she passed through that battlefield. The original name of the Lament realm was the ancient battlefield. Legend has it that 300,000 years ago, in the Hunyuan continent, the evil emperor of the evil realm committed all kinds of evil deeds, brutally killing innocent people. Not only did he torture ordinary people, but he also mercilessly captured many cultivators, who only ate their flesh and blood to cultivate evil skills. As a result, several palace lords of the 3 palaces and 1 hall joined forces to suppress him on the ancient battlefield. That battle lasted for hundreds of years, and in the end, the evil emperor was personally killed by 3 palace lords and the lord of the temple. From then on, the 3 realms remained peaceful. These are all memories from the original owner, but I didn't expect that she would fall into a state of mourning. No wonder no matter how she moves forward, she can't get out. Is that so? Hello. Human, are you okay? The white mouse saw Manchu silently thinking she was scared. Just as it was about to say a few words of comfort, it suddenly saw Manchu lift his head and look at it, saying, "The treasure exploration tribe. If I guess correctly, your tribe naturally has a keen sense of smell for all treasures, right? That's necessary. I'm not boasting about it, young master. Besides the clan leader, I'm the most skilled warrior in treasure exploration in the clan," said the white mouse arrogantly. Manchu's red lips curled slightly, and she looked at it with a smile on her face for a while before saying, "I'll give you 2 choices. One is to be my contract beast, and the other is, if you refuse, I'll leave. You just wait to be turned into a rat." The white mouse widened its eyes and looked incredulous. The clan leader is indeed right. Humans are all treacherous creatures. Let go of me, humans. Hurry up and let go of me, young master. After speaking, the white mouse struggled desperately. However hard it struggled, the vines tied around its waist not only showed no looseness, but also became tighter and tighter. The treasure exploration clan may search for top-notch treasures, but they do not have much force value. Apart from being faster, they are all 5 scumbags in battle. Now Manchu is only 1 foundation building pill away from her foundation. Although her abilities have merged into attributes, this does not mean she cannot use them anymore. How about it? Have you figured it out? Manchu looked at the struggling white mouse with ease. The white mouse's body stiffened for a while before lifting its head to look at her and saying, "I can promise you, but you have to accompany me in searching for something here." "What thing?" Manchu approached it and asked, pulling at the vine. "Purple ling accompanied by flowers, a spiritual plant nurtured by dragon marrow, which is also my purpose of entering Black Peak Valley, but I didn't expect to be caught up in this howling realm." The white mouse wilted and spoke. Manchu was shocked, the spiritual plant nurtured by dragon marrow. Isn't it so coincidental? With a movement of her mind, she took out a small purple flower from the metal box and handed it to the white mouse, saying, "Isn't that what you're talking about?" How did you have this? Where did you find this spiritual plant? And how did you get it? A series of questions, the white mouse's eyes widened in shock. Manchu seeing its expression, Manchu slightly curled her lips. It seemed like she had done it. After retracting the vine, she looked down at the white ball in front of her with the purple diamond companion flower and said, "What are you doing with this flower?" The white mouse looked at the flower in her hand with a drooling expression and said, "You woman, don't even know the purple diamond accompanying flower. This is a treasure comparable to immortal plants. Whether in the animal world or the human race, if you consume this spiritual object, you can achieve a qualitative leap in cultivation." How effective? Manchu's eyes lit up. Sure enough, she had to find a way to study books about alchemy and medicinal herbs well. That. Female. No, sir. If I make a contract with you, can you give me the purple diamond flower in your hand? White Mouse asked cautiously. It really wants to get this spiritual plant. This time, in order to search for it, it disregarded danger and ventured alone into the Black Peak Valley. It searched for half a month but couldn't find it. Now that what it needed was right in front of it, how could it not be excited? Moreover, the human in front of it was not low in strength, and it was not at a disadvantage to contract with her. Of course, Manchu nodded and crouched down in front of it, biting his finger and dropping blood droplets on its eyebrows. A red light suddenly appeared, and a formation of contracts appeared. Soon, Manchu's sea of consciousness became more connected to it. Master, the White Mouse respectfully called out, then stared eagerly at the plant in her hand. Manchu was also resolute, cutting it off at the tail, leaving behind a muddy rhizome and throwing it into a metal box in the space. He handed the accompanying flower to it and stood up. The White Mouse jumped onto Manchu's shoulder with its two paws holding the companion flower and sat down to eat with a click. Mouse White is too unpleasant to listen to, let's call you Shuatuan in the future. Manchu spoke as she walked. Good Lord Luan. Shuatuan replied vaguely. Manchu kept looking around, not knowing whose tomb it belonged to. Inside, it was so large that it couldn't be seen at a glance, and the night pearls around it kept emitting a scorching light. Manchu shook her head, but unfortunately, there was very little space left after installing the keel. She dared not throw anything in now, otherwise she would definitely empty this place. As for the old man's ring, she didn't want to use it at all except for the treasures inside. After finishing eating the companion flower, the snowball suppressed the power in its body and didn't rush to advance. It then looked up and said, Master, there is a room not far ahead that is filled with various treasures, but... It frowned and after a moment of thought, advised, there is a very powerful beast stationed there. With your strength, you may not be its opponent. Why don't we change direction? Manchu paused in his footsteps and said, a ferocious beast. What kind of ferocious beast is it? I don't know, I only dared to walk around outside before, and a very terrifying aura enveloped the room. Shuatuan's whiskers twitched at the corner of his mouth, wrinkling his furry mouse face as he spoke. Since there is a ferocious beast handle, I believe the things inside are definitely not ordinary things. So, how can one not deserve to be pulled off without reason without taking a break? Later, you will enter the sea of consciousness. By the way, there is a little companion inside, named Meng Meng. Previously, she was sleeping because she had eaten companion flowers like you. Manchu spoke slowly as she walked. Aha. After contracting with the owner, I sensed it, Snowball nodded in response. Master, are you really going? Why don't you go to a different place? Shuatuan promises to do his best to explore more treasures for you, Shuatuan advised again. Manchu reached out her little hand and tapped its little head, then walked forward expressionlessly. Seeing her owner so persistent, the snowball couldn't say anything more and could only silently pray. Chapter 9. The Beautiful Man in the Ice Coffin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Master, why did you come to Haifeng Valley? Are you also looking for something? Shuatuan asked curiously. No, Manchu replied lightly. Shuatuan tilted his head in confusion and looked at her stunning profile. Manchu didn't pay attention to it, just looked ahead and thought to himself that the tomb was so quiet. Along the way, he didn't encounter any dangerous factors, which was somewhat unusual. Just as she was pondering to herself, a faint and noisy sound suddenly came from her ear. Manchu stopped and looked back, but there was nothing behind her. Snow, how long have you been here? As soon as the snowball was about to answer, his whole body exploded with hair. Master, hurry. Run. The scream did not end, and then came the hurried sound of stepping. Wow, ah. The snowball was so scared that it bounced around on her shoulder, and Manchu had to reach out and touch its small head to comfort it. It was too late to escape, because not only from the back, but also from the front, there was a large group of unknown things coming from far to near towards the direction they were standing. She was surrounded. The sound was getting closer and closer, and Manchu stood in place, with a large amount of purple lightning condensed in his hands. He stared at the front with an indifferent expression and occasionally scanned the back. Finally, the owner of the voice appeared, and figures holding long spears resembling armored soldiers appeared in front and behind Manchu in an instant. Manchu fixed his gaze and suddenly narrowed his eyes. Blood terracotta warriors. 1,000-year-old mummy, also the most common type of guardian in tombs, let's think of it this way. Wow! It was indeed these monsters, and the snowball spoke trembling all over. Manchu glanced at it and said calmly, even with this courage, you dare to wander around alone. Snowflakes, he didn't think so much at that time. Ignoring it, she tiptoed a little, her body soaring into the air, her collar fluttering and her skirt fluttering, looking down at the blood corpses rushing towards her below. Her eyes suddenly turned cold, and the purple lightning in her hand rushed towards the blood corpses in front and behind without hesitation, with a cold and merciless aura of killing, as if she was about to kill the enemy in the next second. Pai-li-pa. Purple lightning kept hitting the blood corpse below her palm. A ferocious roar rang out, and the blood corpses hit by lightning fell to the ground with a thud. Amidst the thick smoke, charred corpses slowly climbed up to the ground, holding up their long spears and thrusting towards Manchu in mid-air. It's all like this. How could it still move? Snowman exclaimed in terror, suddenly thinking of something. He quickly jumped off Manchu's shoulder and suspended it in front of her. He reached out his paw and pulled out a small porcelain bottle from his mouth, saying, Master, when I threw this thing, you used the lightning from earlier to break it and quickly evacuated. Manchu was taken aback and caught a glimpse of the small porcelain vase it was holding with its two paws. Although curious, she nodded and replied, okay. Upon hearing this, the snowball threw itself forcefully downwards, followed by a lightning bolt that struck the porcelain vase. Without hesitation, Manchu grabbed its small body and quickly ran forward. With a loud bang, thunder and lightning accompanied by the sound of porcelain bottles shattering, and a yellow gas instantly spread to the entire passage. The immortal blood corpses immediately fell to the ground in a large area, lying motionless on the ground. Manchu turned his head and, holding the small body of the snowball, bypassed another passage and rushed straight into a stone house. What was that you just had? Manchu asked as soon as her feet landed. Xue Tuan pulled out the beard on both sides of his mouth with his two small claws and said, This is what the clan leader gave me. Our treasure exploration clan has specially made a numbing agent that neither the human race nor the demon race can resist. However, this only works for people below Yuan. Manchu raised her eyebrows. There's such a powerful thing, but... She seems to remember that it was taken out of this guy's mouth. It's really... As if understanding her thoughts, Xuetuan spoke awkwardly, in fact, the body of our treasure exploration tribe naturally has a storage space, but the mouth happens to be the channel for retrieving things. So, what you just saw was actually taken out of my own storage space. Manchu's mouth twitched slightly, okay. She is ignorant and ignorant. Master, there are many treasures here, don't you want them all? Xue Tuan looked around with bright eyes and spoke. Manchu regained his senses and immediately froze in place, following its gaze. It turned out to be a treasure trove. She walked slowly forward and was immediately dazzled by the boxes of spiritual stones and iron mines. On both sides were some top quality treasures, and even a small amount of spiritual tools and elixirs. There was a large counter in the center, above which were all kinds of books. Manchu picked up a book casually and flipped through it, her eyes suddenly filled with surprise. The Legend of the Divine Pill. She picked up another book and saw that it was all about alchemy and alchemy. Ha ha ha, she couldn't help but burst out laughing, feeling like she had nowhere to find a place to break through her iron shoes. She was still thinking about how to learn alchemy, but the huge surprise hit her. Master, come here quickly, there is a dark grid here. Xuetuan jumped onto the nearby stone ladder and pointed to the dark grid. Upon hearing this, Manchu quickly waved his hand and collected all the books into the space before lifting his steps and squatting down beside the snowball. I reached out and touched the dark square. Isn't it a stone? She was taken aback. Could there be something inside that couldn't be done? Fingers pressed down without hesitation. No response. Manchu and Xuetuan exchanged a glance. Was it just a decoration? Master, I feel that ferocity. Before the words of the snowball could be heard, only the sound of boom rang out. The place where each person and mouse stood suddenly shook violently. In no time, a white light rushed out from the ground, enveloping Manchu's body, and the huge suction force directly sucked him into the ground. Manchu's pupils contracted, and before she could resist, a sudden pain hit her mind before she fainted. When Manchu woke up, she found herself lying on the cold ground. She sat up straight and saw a furry white mouse lying quietly beside her. She quickly held it in her palm. Snowball. Wake up. Shake the little white mouse in his hand. Seeing that it had no intention of waking up, he activated the power of the contract to recall it to his own sea of consciousness. Where is this? Standing up, he looked around and saw that the room, which was like an ice cave, was covered in thick ice blocks. The uneven walls were covered in crystal-clear icicles, and the cold air around them was overwhelming. Suddenly, Yu Guang caught a glimpse of a huge ice coffin not far away. Curiously, she came to the side of the coffin and was immediately taken aback by the sight inside. It's actually a man. An extremely handsome man with almost perfect facial features, snow-white skin, thin and lightly pursed lips, sharp and angular contours, purple long hair flowing out, and a line of irises and delicate mother-in-law on his forehead that stands out most prominently. He is dressed in white clothes that surpass snow, clean and flawless. Just. Looking at the 4 golden long nails at the man's heart and the huge chain at his ankle, she looked surprised. Chapter 10. Divine Spring. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After struggling to search in her mind, she still didn't know what these golden nails were, and Manchu lost interest in exploring. Suddenly, a small transparent bead rolled out from the man's waist, immediately catching her eye. What is this? Manchu suppressed her chill and reached out her onion-white jade finger to pick up the small bead. Suddenly, the colorful scene inside turned into chaos. Manchu was taken aback for a moment, and curiously rubbed it with her fingers. Suddenly, a sharp pain came from her fingertips, and upon closer inspection, drops of blood appeared on her fingers, which were quickly absorbed by the small beads. At this moment, a golden light burst out from the pearl. Before Manchu could react, she suddenly spun around and stepped on the soft lawn, shaking her swollen head. She then looked up and was suddenly stunned by the sight before her. A beautiful fairyland in my personal world, the entire space is shrouded in rich spiritual energy. The flowers, plants, and trees nearby, and the distant mountains are faintly visible. On the right, there is a clear spring that continuously emits white smoke. In the small river on the side, it is clear and bottomless, and the fish in the river are swimming freely. Not far ahead, 3 three-story mahogany houses stand still. In the middle, next to the small courtyard of the mahogany house, there is a huge circular groove. Manchu slowly walked to the groove and saw that clear and transparent spring water was bubbling out from inside. Above the spring water, there was a strong and viscous spiritual energy floating. Above the groove, there is a stone tablet with the 3 big characters, Spring of God, engraved on it. Manchu looked at the spring water that was about to overflow from the groove in confusion. The spring water was not simple at first glance. Was it something powerful? Fingertips lightly touched, and the cool and comfortable feeling immediately spread to her heart. After thinking for a moment, she picked up a handful of spring water and tasted it lightly. It was sweet and there was nothing special about it. Perhaps she had thought too much about it. Just as Manchu was self-doubting, he suddenly felt waves of scorching light coming from the dantian. In no time, a thin layer of black dirt slowly began to discharge from his body, and a faint foul smell emanated. This series of changes amazed Manchu. The first thing that came to her mind was that this water could wash tendons and cut marrow. Without waiting for her to be shocked, the suppressed strength in her body constantly wanted to break through the shackles. Manchu quickly sank into the elixir field and desperately combed through the rich spiritual energy in her body. This was not enough. She had to find the foundation building elixir as soon as possible. Suddenly, she thought of the rows of elixirs in the tomb room, and couldn't help but regret why she didn't put them all into the space at that time. With a sigh, Manchu walked towards the wooden house and never expected that there would be rows of various books in front of him, including alchemy, weapons, formations, talismans and seals. Everything. After being stunned for a while, I couldn't come to my senses. Suddenly, it seemed like something was on my mind. I quickly went to the wooden house on the right and pushed open the door. Sure enough. The room on the right marked the alchemy room, while the one on the left was the alchemy room. She really came up with whatever she wanted. Since she had such an opportunity, how could she waste it in vain? Manchu thought truthfully as she pinched the small porcelain vase she had taken from the nearby wooden cabinet. 15 minutes later, she came to a fruit grove and stood still, gazing at the large trees in front of her. Manchu smiled and realized that with this space, whatever she did in the future would be much more convenient. With a movement of thought, he immediately left the space and returned to the side of the ice coffin. Looking down at the man in the ice coffin, she suddenly remembered that the small bead was nowhere to be found. She closed her eyes and looked inside at dantian, only to see a misty little bead lying quietly next to the spiritual root. She couldn't help but be taken aback. Isn't this the bead? Unexpectedly, it merged with her divine soul. Not only that, but even the space where her spiritual power was condensed merged with it when she came out. This operation. The pearl fell out of this man's body, and now she has taken it to recognize the master with blood. She feels a little guilty in her heart. Although you are dead, I believe these few golden nails in your heart must have been made by your enemy. I accidentally took your things, so I will help you destroy these things on your body, so that you can also enter reincarnation well. So, let's cancel it all in one stroke. After speaking, Manchu condensed his spiritual power in his hand and carefully examined the 4 golden nails in his heart before pulling them out with his fingers together towards one of them. Just as she touched the golden nail with her hand, she was instantly bounced several meters away by a terrifying barrier. Manchu stabilized his body, suppressing the surging blood and energy in his heart. He looked at the ice coffin, which was constantly emitting waves of cold air, and was somewhat shocked. There is such a powerful barrier. Who is so malicious, not only sealed it with such powerful golden nails, but also set up such a powerful barrier? Even the chain under their feet is not simple. Master, suddenly 2 voices rang out from her mind, and a white light suddenly appeared. The 2 figures immediately appeared in front of her. Meng, Shuatuan, are you awake? Manchu looked at the 2 beasts, big and small, with joyful eyes. Aha! Master, where are we? Snowball jumped onto Manchu's shoulder and asked. I don't know, Manchu shook his head. What a strong barrier. Meng stood upright beside her, frowning and speaking. Manchu walked slowly to the side of the ice coffin and stood still. Suddenly, the snowball on his shoulder exclaimed in surprise, soul-devouring nail. Soul-devouring nail. Manchu was confused by its words, and Meng took 2 steps forward, stretched out her paws and lay on the edge of the ice coffin, carefully looking for a while before finally looking at the snowball and saying, Hey! Little mouse, what is the soul-devouring nail? Xue Tuan scratched his ear and raised his beard on both sides of his mouth, saying, actually, I have also read about it in books with the clan leader. The soul-devouring nail comes from a higher-level plane and is one of the divine tools exclusively used by the Temple Master and Holy Chi. I didn't expect such a powerful thing to appear on this lower-level plane. However, who is this man who looks so infuriating to both gods and humans? Is he dead and dead? Xue Tuan said with a stunning expression, staring at his round eyes. Manchu ignored it and only frowned slightly. As a divine artifact, how could she take it out? What's the way to break this barrier? She glanced sideways at the snowball on her shoulder and asked. Master, you probably have taken a liking to this soul-devouring nail. Although it is a divine artifact, with your current cultivation level, you cannot control it and may even harm yourself, Xue Tuan spoke in disagreement. It's okay, Manchu shook her head. Since this is a divine artifact, she should give it a try no matter what. If she succeeds, not only will she repay her favor, but she can also obtain the artifact. Why not do it? No, I don't know either. After thinking for a moment, the snowball quickly reached out its paw and pulled out a book from its mouth. Suddenly, a book appeared in front of it, handed it to Manchu, and it spoke, "This is it, Master, read it yourself." Manchu took over and flipped over. In addition to the introduction of the soul-devouring nail, there was also the iron chain at the man's ankle.